Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another A Month of Service workshop. Thank you, everybody, for being here. My name is Cecile Carlson, and I'm a coordinator here at the Department of Neighborhoods, and we are one of the partners in A Month of Service. A Month of Service is a collaboration between different entities, and we come together to provide education to the community on different topics, all related to financial empowerment. We know that there's a lot of underserved communities out there who don't necessarily get this information or don't get experts in the field to have them come to their communities and talk to them about this. So we're very thankful and happy that you guys are here, and very thankful to our partners as well. Today, we're going to be talking about property taxes, protests, valuations, exemptions, and payment options. And we have the Harris Central Appraisal District here with us, and they will be presenting, as well as the Harris County Tax Office. And before we get into any introductions, I do want to let you guys know that this is a great opportunity for everybody to ask questions and learn from the experts. However, we are in a public forum and we are live streaming, so make sure that the questions that you ask are not specific to your situation, or that they reveal any personal identifiable information, because we definitely want to make sure that we maintain everybody's privacy as we learn and engage with the information. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Ms. Mabel, and she will do her introduction, and I think then we'll go through everybody so that they can introduce themselves. And again, thank you so much for being here.
All righty. Thank you, Di. Thank you, Cecile. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mabel Menifee, and I'm with the Harris Central Appraisal District. And today we're going to be part of a discussion about property taxes, particularly exemptions, as well as protest options. We're in the height of the protest season here at HCAD right now, so a lot of folks have attended some of our workshops that we've held over the last couple of months to kind of go over to kind of go and talk in detail about protesting and the various options that you have, when you may want to protest, when and so the deadline for doing that has already passed. So I understand we have some folks here who might also listening that may be able to do it next year, or perhaps waiting on their chance to protest and may glean a little bit more information from our presentation today. We've got with us the senior appraiser, Anitra Collins, is going to talk to you about the specifics of what Harris County HCAD's role is in the property tax system. And then also we're going to talk about exemptions, because exemptions are the best way to save money on your property taxes by having those on your primary residence. And that's going to be presented by Donna Pensick, who is a Senior Customer Service Resolution Specialist. So we appreciate you joining us today. And now I'm going to turn it over to the tax office for a quick introduction, because it's really important that people do understand the difference between the role of HCAD in the property tax system, as well as the role of the tax office as well. So Shay, would you like to take it away?
Yes, ma'am. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shay Pinkowski. I'm the Manager of Customer Service with the Harris County Tax Office of Annette Ramirez. We're super excited to come and speak with you guys today, hopefully get some questions answered, along with giving you guys some directions with anything that you might be currently dealing with yourselves. We're full of a lot of information, so we have a lot of experts around who can answer any questions. Harris County Tax Office normally handles the billing sections, but I'll get into that a little bit further on ahead. For now, I'm going to go ahead and patch it over to HCAD, and they'll start their presentation on the appraisal part of the process. And afterwards, I'll come back in again and have a little talk about my office and what we do.
Okay, take it away, Anitra.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anitra Collins, as Miss Mabel did introduce me. I'm appraiser in the residential division at the Harris Central Appraisal District. We've got a slideshow that hopefully most of your general questions will be answered here via this slideshow about the appraisal district, and also some information regarding exemptions. So I'm going to get started and go over them with you. And then also I may end up doing the exemption section as well. But if there are some questions, Ms. Donna will definitely be in the chat as well to answer those questions, as she is a specialist in exemptions. So may y'all ask, what are property taxes? Well, basically property taxes support critical local services, as you know, because we don't have any type of state income taxes. These local taxing units include, your police and fire protection, schools, roads, and all of our bridge maintenance, anything that you can think of that you basically see on a day-to-day basis on the way to work, parks and community centers. This is basically our Texas legislator created this system designed, as we don't have any state income taxes to support these ongoing things. So the role of the Central Appraisal District, basically we value each property in Harris County as of January 1. Per the Texas Tax Code, we have to value at 100% of market value. Some of the properties or items that we value are residential homes, commercial businesses, agricultural. Agriculture could be anything, cows, bees, etc. Industrial, we do value those as well, and business personal property. We administer exemptions, which again, I've stated at the beginning, there will be a section on exemptions in this slideshow. We also certify the appraisal rolls. This certification allows the taxing jurisdictions, which are your MUD taxes, your school taxes, and Annette Ramirez, the tax office, which is on the call today, to set their rates accordingly so everybody can keep the system fair and be taxed. Overseen locally by our chief appraiser and the chief appraiser, and we have a 9-member administrative board. Now, here are some important dates to remember. This is just the annual, I like to call it tax calendar, but it's the annual appraisal calendar. January 1, you'll hear that a lot, especially if you are protesting your property's market value. January 1 is the actual date of appraisal. It's the date per the Texas Tax Code that the appraisal district has to come up with a value for each property in Harris County. So this date is not set by HCAD, it's set by the actual our Texas legislation. So January 1 is the appraisal date. May 15th is the general protest deadline date. Once we mail you your value notice in the mail, you have that general date to send your protest form back if you disagree with the value, or you don't like the value of your market value for your property, or you have 30 days until the date that is on that letter. In October and November, that's when the tax office began to mail their bills. They've adopted their tax rates and they're starting to set out to mail their bills. February 1st is the delinquency date. So if you don't want to pay any penalties or interest, you definitely want to get your tax bills paid prior to the delinquency date, February 1st. So here are some just general, I say, information. Mass appraisal is an appraisal by sales. It's conducted by the process of appraisal. A lot of times, property owners believe that it's each individual coming to the house and and appraising the property, but that's not the case. Again, as mentioned, I stated that we must do it by 100% market value. Market value is based on whatever the sales occurred from the previous year. We are overseen by or tested biannually reports from the actual state comptroller. So we have to be in accordance, and that's the reason why we have to do it at 100% market value. HCAD is responsible for 1.9 million parcels, and we serve over 500 taxing jurisdictions in Harris County. So that's a lot of property to cover. Oh, and then I failed to mention that I wanted to also state that Texas is a non-disclosure state. Property owners definitely don't have to disclose their purchase price of the property. However, we do, because we must be in compliance with the property tax code. We do have vendors and other means of acquiring sales data information at the time. But yes, Texas is a voluntary non-disclosure state. These are just some aspects of what determines your property value. A lot of times, a common question that property owners always ask is, how do y'all come up with the property value? Well, for the most part, these are some of the items that are listed on how we kind of get the process started of where your market value comes from. It's derived based on neighborhood sales, the overall condition of your property, amenities, meaning if you have a pool or things like that, we have to make a value for that on your property, and other similar sales. Or if you recently purchased your home, a recent purchase of your property within that sales year is obviously the best indication of market value, because that's the definition by which market value is, what a willing buyer is willing to pay for the property at that time. Now, in the beginning, when I said that annual value notice is mailed out and you have that general deadline date, May 15th, to protest, this is an example of what the annual value notice looks like. We do start sending these around mid-March. You'll see some information on here as far as your property description, obviously your name, hopefully you get the right one. You have an I-file number, the tax year, and also it basically states on here as of January 1. Notate that I did say January 1. You'll see that a lot of times because the Texas Property Tax Code, we have to adhere to the January 1 deadline for market value. See. On the back of, I believe it's on the back of the second page, is basically telling you some of the other information that may be readily helpful for you to kind of get an approximation of what your tax bill will be, but keeping in mind the appraisal district is just valuing the property. So we're just going to tell you what your market value is. It's basically saying that your appraisal cap may be a little bit lower in value based on the 10% increase or the tax limitation if you do have a residential homestead exemption. That's applied to the previous year's appraised value, and it can't exceed 10% from the next year ongoing. Just touching on market value, this is blatant definition, the value at which a property will sell for to a willing buyer on the open market. And HK's primary role is to establish an annual market value. So this is done annually every January 1st per the Texas tax code. And this is the page 2, or typically on the back of that value notice, when they're listing like the county and the ISDs, and a breakdown of your property value as far as the land, last year's value and improvements, and giving you your specific taxing jurats. The kind of got to give you an idea of what you paid the previous year and your current exemption. Okay, these are just some questions to consider when you protesting, which are that's common kind of questions. The most common things, obviously, we get told and are asked, what if my house has X, Y, and Z? Some of the things that you can bring to your hearing, which will be helpful, are repair estimates, photos, obviously for illustration to kind of just show the appraiser at the time if you opted to have an informal meeting or even an iSettle where you're able to upload that information. Other sales that are in your neighborhood that happened or occurred within that last year. Again, January 1 is the appraisal date. So we typically like to look at sales from the previous year all the way up until the next year, January 1. So for example, for January 2025's protest, if you have a current protest pending, we would love to see sales from January 1, 2024 up until January 1, 2025. Other similar homes, if you have a friend down the street that has a similar house to you, that's 200 square feet, maybe 100 square feet, just giving you an example, or maybe the same type of property and their market value is a little bit lower than your market value, you may want to use them as a similar comparable to your property. Again, keeping in mind market value and not the appraised value, because we are appraising in mass market value as of January 1. So this is basically saying what happens after you file a protest. You get a notification. That notification is just like the value notice that I showed you. Whatever how you set up your notification, if you set your notification by mail, or if you set your correspondence information via email, whichever way you opted into it, that's when you'll receive notification as to when the time and date of your hearing will be. Typically, the notifications are mailed within 2 weeks, and within those 2 weeks time frame, you're able to access HCAD's evidence packet via the iFile system. And basically, in that evidence package, it can range anywhere from 30 to 100 pages. It just depends on where you live and where your neighborhood is, and what sales did occur that the district was able to obtain from your neighborhood or from adjoining neighborhoods. All right, this is methods and types of protests. Again, touching on how you receive your correspondence by way of protest, if you signed up of the protest via online or either paper form. iSettle is online, or iFile online versus paper. iSettle is it's in lieu of an informal meeting. Basically what that is it's an electronic format. Instead of actually coming into the physical office and sitting down with an appraiser is listening to your testimony and looking at your evidence is viewed by an appraiser over the computer screen, reading your protest and any other your documentation that you have submitted with your iFile protest online. And then they send you back an offer that you can either decide to agree to or decline. If you agree to, obviously that will be the end of your hearing for that year. If you decline, then you have the alternative or optional by right as a homeowner to attend the secondary hearing, which is here on the slideshow. That says formal hearing with the appraisal review board. The appraisal review board can be set up that meeting by way of in-person or virtual, as like a Zoom conference like today. This is uh-oh. Sorry guys, let me go back. Okay. Here's some helpful tips and information about the ARB, or Appraisal Review Board. Basically, it's a 3-member panel, and there's also an appraiser in that meeting to listen to the evidence presented by the property owner, answer questions from the Appraisal Review Board, answer questions from the property owner, and show HCAD's information and render what they feel would be a fair market value for your property based on the evidence presented. Ultimately, the appraisal review board gives the last decision based on the two. They're basically there to be the intermediary between HCAD and the property owner. And what this information is basically said on this slide is you want to become prepared and organized. Typically, the appraisal review board loves for you to bring 4 copies. It's some information that also will be included in a brochure if you do decide the route to attend your secondary hearing by way of appraisal review board. And they basically tell you to bring 4 copies in person. If you do have a computer, I believe, and you want to illustrate something to the appraisal review board at that time, There's also some information within their brochure that kind of guides you and tell you what you will have to do for that as well. Now we have reached the exemptions portion. We'll see if Miss Donna wants me to continue on or
No,
she'll just
I'll go ahead.
intercede. And she's going to be talking to you all about some general questions about exemptions. And if you all have some other questions outside of anything specific, we'll be in the chat to answer them for you. Well, I will be for now.
Thanks, Anitra.
No problem.
All right, exemptions. What are they? How can they save me money, and how do I get them? They're administered by HCAD. It exempts a portion of the property's value from taxation. It's your primary residence only. It's used by taxing authorities to calculate your property tax bill. Exemptions exclude part of your property from taxation. It reduces the appraised value before tax rates are applied. The most common residential exemptions, we have the general residence homestead, the over 65. There is an over 55 surviving spouse. We have a disabled person exemption, and then we have disabled veterans exemptions, and there's other service-related exemptions. General residence homestead exemption. You have to own and occupy the home as your primary residence. The documentation that's required is a proof of ownership, which we may need your recorded deed if the ownership is not updated, and a copy of your Texas state driver's license or identification card with the property address on it. This provides 10% appraisal increase cap. It also has a $100,000 school tax exemption by state law, and there are other exemptions may be offered by various jurisdictions like the city, county, special district, depends on where you live. We do have now since 2022, the immediate residence homestead exemption, IRE is what we call it. You qualify upon occupying the home, and it's basically for new builds or homes where the previous owner had no exemptions. You must apply before the first anniversary of the date the property was acquired. If the previous owner did not have exemptions or the home was never occupied, the exemption will be granted as follows. For the first year, upon approval, it's prorated on as of the date you own and occupy the property. The second year, it'll be for the entire year, you get the full exemption, and that year establishes your cap base year going forward. If the home was previously owned and receiving exemptions, the previous owner's exemptions will remain for the remainder of the applicable tax year. The over 65 exemption, you qualify for the entire year in that first year that you turn 65. We recommend that you file the month you turn 65. The disability exemption, you qualify for the entire year that you become eligible to receive disability benefits under federal old age survivors and disability insurance, or you have a physician's statement. The benefits for either exemption, you receive a school tax ceiling or freeze in that first year that you're granted the exemption. Exemptions are granted to homeowners with general residence homestead. You're eligible for tax deferral and to pay taxes in installments without penalties. And there's other exemptions may be granted by individual taxing jurisdictions. The over 55 surviving spouse exemption. You qualify if your deceased spouse died in a year in which they qualified for the over 65 or disability exemption. The surviving spouse must be 55 years of age or older on the date of death. You receive all over 65 exemption benefits. That school tax ceiling continues and is transferable, and then you're eligible for tax deferral and to pay those taxes in installments without penalties if you need it. Heirship exemption. So these are the steps for receiving homestead exemption if heir property. So on our application form 11.13, in section 3, there's 2 questions. It's highlighted on the slide that are important to answer if you're the heir and you're applying. Number 1 is the property for which this application is submitted an heir property? And do other heir property owners occupy the property as well? And along with the application, there's information that's needed. You need 1, an affidavit establishing ownership of interest in the property. This can be an heirship affidavit or the Form 50-114-A affidavit. 2, we need the death certificate for the prior owner of the property. 3, a copy of the property's most recent utility bill. And then 4, citation of any court record relating to the applicant's ownership of the property if it's available. Exemptions, how to apply. So you can mail that paper application form in. We actually do have an online submission. And you can also use the HCAD mobile app, or you can email in the application documents. Depending on when submitted, the processing time may take longer. It's important to submit everything at once to avoid delay in processing. Once applied to your account, you will be notified. They'll send you a confirmation letter, or they'll let you know if there was additional information that was needed further. And we do have a how-to video. It's available at the website, hcad.org, and you would go under forms, and then you would click on popular forms, and then that form 1113 is there. And then if you look to the right, that's the annual exemptions checkup, we're calling it. We send out a small confirmation postcard at the end of the year on all the accounts that have homestead exemptions. And as you see, there's on the front part, it has a type of homestead exemption, and it'll list them there. And so what happens is it's important for us, because if this is returned to us by the U.S. Postal Service, we need to requalify and make sure that that exemption is still applicable to the property. This was passed as part of November 2023, the voter referendum, the circuit breaker. So it's a 3-year pilot project. It applies to non-homesteaded properties valued at or below $5 million for 2024. The appraised value for the current year cannot exceed 20% of the appraised value for the preceding year. It excludes homestead and agricultural properties. You must have owned the property as of 1/1/2025, and it provides a 20% cap, and that is automatically applied similar to the homestead cap. This is just a copy of our website. You can get to it by going to www.hcad.org. And then our contact us information. Our physical location is 13013 Northwest Freeway, Houston, Texas, 77040. Our general phone information is 713-957-7800. I've given you the website. There's the website as well. And then we do have an online contact us web form. So there's the link for that, and you can go in and identify your property and, ask us whatever questions you have. I've also put my name and direct email address in the chat. If anyone has a specific question for their personal property, you're more than welcome to email me directly for assistance. So thank you so much for being here.
Yes, so that is the end of our presentation. And I think Shay is going to take over from the tax office. But Donna and I will be in the chat answering any questions. Again, just keep in mind that this is public as mentioned, so you don't want to put any personal identifiable information in the chat. But any general questions, we will definitely answer. And if you have anything specific, we encourage you to reach out to our sources. The general phone number for customer service and information assistance is a great way to get in contact with the appraisal district.
Yeah, if you are talking, we cannot hear you.
I think I hear you now.
Interesting. Is that any better?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Perfect. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry about that. I'm having some issues with volume today. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shay. Again, I am the Manager of Customer Service with the Office of Annette Ramirez for the Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office, and I'm here to talk a little bit about the latter portion of property tax season where it comes to actually creating the bills, getting those sent out to you, and then, of course, the actual part in processing your payments for property taxes. So I'm just going to go ahead and dive right in. So we elected a new tax assessor collector last year. Ms. Annette Ramirez just started her first term with us, and she is a wealth of knowledge. We have a lot of new changes and things coming into play this year that we're very excited about. But we have some information here about her if you haven't had the chance to meet or hear about her yet. This is our newest tax assessor collector. And what the tax assessor collector is responsible for is not only collecting property taxes, but they also are the entity responsible for registering vehicles, along with processing title transfers for your vehicles, and maintaining the voter roll for registered voters in Harris County. So whenever you go to register to vote, you can do so through our office. We're the office that renews the sticker for your car's registration, and we're the office that bills and receives the actual payments for your property taxes. So we're the office that is in charge of that for the Harris County taxing jurisdictions. Just as a small reminder on behalf of the auto section of our office, when you're going to renew your vehicle's registration this year, please make sure that you are also getting your vehicle's emissions test completed. We no longer require a safety test for vehicle registrations, but we are requiring an emissions test still. So whenever it's time for you to renew your vehicle sticker, just keep that in mind. And that was just a brief request from our auto section. But as a brief overview for property taxes, the Harris County Tax Office maintains approximately 1.7 million accounts. And between those 1.7 million accounts, we collect more than $8 billion in property taxes each year. Now, we don't keep any of this money. All of this money is distributed and dispersed to the jurisdictions that we collect for, and we collect for over 80 of those. So those would be including your Harris County taxes, your Houston ISD taxes if you're located in the Houston ISD zone, your City of Houston taxes, along with your Harris County Flood Control, Port of Houston, and quite a few MUDs and emergency services districts. So all of these districts are public services that we pay taxes to in order for upkeeping and in order to be able to use these services. Our office is the office that maintains and collects the property taxes for these jurisdictions, and then we send all of those payments that are received to those jurisdictions in order for them to have the funding that they need to continue on with their processes. So in the past 4 years, there have been a lot of changes made to your taxes. You've seen a lot of reductions to your taxes in total. If you have that homestead and over 65 exemption that was mentioned in the HCAT presentation earlier. But in the last 4 years, Harris County increased quite a few things for your exemptions, including an over 65 slash disabled exemptions for Harris County. Those went up from 229,000 to 320,000. Your City of Houston exemptions also increased for your over 65 exemptions on homesteaded properties, and that was increased from 160,000 to 260,000. Your school, your general homestead exemption, this isn't for just those who are over the age of 65, but for all homeowners who live and reside in the property and have that exemption placed on the property. That went up from 25,000 to 4 years ago to 100,000 just last year. And in addition, this year, coming up in November, there will be another suggestion for Senate Bill 4 and Senate Bill 23 to increase your exemptions again. So that is something that you'll want to look into and read up on in order to go and place your votes this upcoming election. So just keep that in mind that it is something to look forward to. It is Senate Bill 4 and Senate Bill 23 that you'll want to read up on. In addition to all these changes to your exemptions, we also had in the last 4 years updated the homestead exemption to be able to be prorated. And prorated means that instead of starting from the first full year in which you were living and residing in that property and owning that property, you would be able to do so from the date that you move in, as opposed to waiting for the first full year for your homestead exemption to take effect and be able to reduce your taxes. So that's helped out a lot of folks these past 4 years. There have been a lot of changes made to reduce those tax bills. So when I say tax bill, this is what I'm referring to. This is a page that shows how your tax bill will look, and these will be sent out as usual towards the end of the year, starting in around October, possibly November. Since there's going to be those changes to the exemptions, or there's possibility of those changes being made to the exemptions. But this is what your tax bill will normally look like. That bottom section there is what we call a tax coupon. And on that tax coupon, that is perforated to be removed should you decide that you would like to make your payments to your property taxes with a check or a money order. You'd be able to send these to us in the mail, or if you would prefer, you'd be able to send these to us by coming into a branch office or into the main office in downtown. And this holds all of your relevant information. This holds your account number, your address, along with the amount that you would be paying for your property taxes. So if you were to bring this into our office, we'd be able to find your information very easily. But that's why we keep this notice on here, so you can see what you're going to be looking at come this November. In addition to having the option of the usual process, which is having your tax statements mailed to you, you also have the option of signing up for electronic tax statements. This is something that would be sent to your email every year at around the same time, November, for your property taxes to be sent to you in an electronic format. Now, please keep in mind, whenever you sign up for these electronic format emails, it does cause it so that you would not receive your statement in the mail as well as in an email format. So just keep in mind, if you decide to do this, it's totally okay. And if you keep active maintenance on your email, this is a really helpful method for those of us who may not be in the States all the time, or may not be in this location. It might be a separate property that you kind of have to keep tabs on. And for some, it is a lot easier to receive an email than it is to wait for a statement to be sent to you in the mail, especially if you're out of state. So you can register for that on our website, but this is an option that is available to you. So you'll hear me say calculating a tax bill quite often during this presentation, just because that is such an integral part of what we do. But the way that we calculate your tax bills is by taking your taxable value, which is determined by the appraisal district. So that's the appraised value minus any exemptions that might be applicable to your account. Well, that's your taxable value. That's the amount that we are able to tax on. We take that value and we multiply it by the tax rate. Now, every jurisdiction, every one of those 80 plus jurisdictions I mentioned to you earlier, those jurisdictions all come up with their own tax rates. Those will be determined coming here towards the end of the year, end of the summer. And once we have those tax rates, then we have a better idea of how much your taxes are going to be. But when we have those definite tax rates, that's when we start calculating your property taxes. So we take that taxable value and we multiply it by the rate, and that's how we determine how much each one of those jurisdictions would be collecting from you in taxes. So that's how we determine what your tax bill looks like. Just for those visual folks who prefer to have a visual example of what your exemptions look like and what a big change and difference it makes to have the exemptions versus to not, your homestead exemption does reduce your taxes by a pretty significant amount. So this is based off of an average appraisal value of $342,000. But as you can see, without any exemptions, the tax bill is usually a little upwards of $7,000. With just your homestead, you do save a little over $2,000. So there is a pretty good difference there. But when you have the over 65 on your homestead, so either you're over the age of 65 or you have a disability or you are a disabled veteran, your exemptions get extended on that, and those exemptions become higher, so your taxes get lowered. So you can see here you would save a little over $5,000 in your property taxes on a value given here of $342,000. But you can see how big of a difference it is versus not having any exemptions to just the homestead and having the homestead and an over 65 or the homestead and a disabled exemption. So just keep that in mind. If you are eligible for any of these, this is just a way to save money on your property taxes. It's not going to come back and be collected on at a later time. This is just a reduction to your taxes as is. So keep that in mind if it's something that you haven't gotten around to doing yet. So we are in hurricane season, unfortunately, and as you all know, as Houstonians, we do see a lot of storms come through here. We see hurricanes, tornadoes, the works. But one of the things that we have available to us during states of emergency or states of disaster is assistance for damaged property during those disaster times if you're located in that disaster area. It's an exemption that you can apply for with the Harris Central Appraisal District, and we're not in one right now, but it is good and good information to have should we be hit by a hurricane or another storm. So just keep this in mind that this is something that is available to you in those cases of emergency and disaster. Tax limitations. You'll hear this referred to as by many different things. You'll hear it referred to as a tax limitation or a tax ceiling or a tax freeze. And essentially what this does is it limits how much we are able to collect in taxes for your school, along with some other taxing jurisdictions depending on who collects for you. But what this does is it limits how much you are able to be collected on for your taxes. So this applies to homesteads of over 65 and disabled homeowners. And this would essentially cause it to be the year in which your freeze is created, which is that year that you become over 65 and have that exemption on your account. That year to the next year, you'll see that the taxes will not go higher than what they were the year in which you started this freeze. So let's say the property value goes up and you have normally on your calculations a higher amount than you would have the year before. Say you paid $200 in 2024, but then in 2025 the calculations come up to being $500. Well, you wouldn't pay the $500, you would pay based off of whatever that frozen amount was the first year that you had that over 65 tax limitation on there. So it is something that we do automatically. We calculate for you and we put it into the system, and that's where it stays. You don't have to apply for anything so long as you already have that homestead and over 65 exemption placed on your account from the appraisal district. So it is just something that is good to know if you're trying to calculate what your bill should look like and you're coming up with a completely different number. This is probably why. Another option that you have as an over 65 homesteaded person or of course, a disabled homestead or a disabled veterans homestead is something called a tax deferral. And what when taxes are deferred, they're technically postponed, meaning those taxes are still owed. Those are still taxes that you are required to pay. However, what it does is it reduces how much, or it gives you additional time in which to pay them without having to worry about coming under litigation or without having to worry about foreclosure to the property. It also reduces how much you would pay in penalty and interest fees. So with the deferral, you don't get collected a penalty fee. You would only be collected on an interest, and that's 5% per year, not per month, per year, which is drastically less than what you would normally be collected on should you be delinquent on your taxes or still be owing your taxes for that year. So just keep that in mind. It is not a cancellation of taxes. If you have a bill that is more than $0, you are still required to pay that bill. You are just given additional ample time in which to pay. So meaning, some folks will go and, I don't want to defer my taxes. I pay my taxes on time, and that's excellent. It's fantastic. It is an option for you should the unthinkable happen, say you're out of or, should you just forget. When you defer your taxes, it protects you from that litigation. It helps you avoid those additional penalty and interest fees. But this could be just in case of emergencies. If you would prefer to continue to pay your property taxes, you are more than welcome to, and we encourage you to do so. But this deferral can help when it comes to emergencies. Say you're not in the area when those taxes become due. Say you're in the hospital, or, hopefully you're somewhere on vacation, you just completely forgot about it. But it is good to have that safety net should that occur, in which you would not be paying as much penalty and interest as you would if you were deferred. Now, this deferral is active, or those deferrals are active until either you remove it yourself or you are no longer the owner of the property, meaning that you sell it, you gift it, or if you pass away. Those deferrals are no longer active. You have 181 days from the date in which you no longer own that property to pay the difference, to pay those amounts as per your deferral. And then after those 181 days, say you don't pay off the total amount of what would have been owed on that deferred account, then you will have to pay with what is the penalty and interest would have been without the deferral on it. So keep that in mind. It is something that you'll want to tell your heirs about, or if they plan on receiving the property upon your passing, or whether you decide that you're going to gift it to someone or sell it. Make sure that they're aware, if you haven't been paying your taxes or you're on the deferral and you've just been kind of letting them accumulate, that they are aware that this is going to be their responsibility upon the transferal of that property into their name. Again, as I mentioned before, this is available to property owners over the age of 65 with a homestead, a disabled homestead, or a disabled veterans homestead. And this is something that you would apply with the appraisal district as well. We do recommend that when you're in the process of considering getting a deferral, that you consult with your mortgage company. These mortgage companies and these banks may not allow you to have a deferral on the account, as they have a vested interest in the property. And when they have an interest in the property, they are required to upkeep with those tax payments. And while it is not going to go into foreclosure, it's not going to come into litigation, they are required to maintain those payments and ensure that those taxes are being paid, and they'll just turn around and make sure that you pay them in exchange. So just keep that in mind whenever you're going through this process, that not all banks will allow you to have a deferral on your account while they are also having a vested interest in that property. Aside from the deferral, for those of us who are not over the age of 65, for those of us who are not homesteaders or who have property aside from our homesteads, such as land, business personal property, or just another property that we do not reside in, you do have other options for payments as well. We offer flexible payment plans for property taxes, and this is only available once they become delinquent, but they're a financial planning tool, meaning that this can help you in order to avoid collection efforts, foreclosure actions, and of course can be paid off early, but this helps you in order to manage your payments and prepare yourself for finishing to pay those taxes if it is not possible for you to pay them off all at once in the before the delinquency date. If your account has not been contracted by the Harris County attorneys or by another law firm starting collection, you're actually able to avoid those collection efforts and those additional collection fees that would accrue onto your account. So keep that in mind whenever you know for a fact that you're not going to be able to pay those taxes. They are very, very helpful. We have two types of plans. One is for homesteaded plans, and those can be for our over the age of 65 homeowners. This can be for our any homeowner whatsoever. And we can do these for extended payment agreements from 12 to 36 months, along with making sure that you're aware that you do still pay penalty and interest when you're under a payment agreement. However, when you're a homestead, it does get reduced. So it is a 1% interest per month plus the initial penalty months, depending on when you begin that payment agreement. You can include current and prior year taxes into this payment agreement, and the due date for both of these is going to be at the end of each month. For other payment agreements for non-residences, personal property, land, or business and commercial property, we are able to offer 12-month payment agreements, and those include all normal penalty and interest, but it helps you avoid that foreclosure action or that attorney's fees and collections action. Again, you can do this for all current and prior years, and until the end of each month is when those payments will be due. But keep in mind, for this upcoming year, for prior years, we had the ability to do something based off of COVID rules, which is we would continue to roll your previous year's taxes into the next payment agreement. This year is our kind of a buffer year. We are allowing this to happen for this year, but next year for 2025, if you are under a payment agreement for prior year's taxes, we will no longer be able to extend that payment agreement. You would have to complete that payment agreement and pay off your taxes. If you are unable to pay off your current taxes for 2025, then we would not be able to create a new payment agreement for you until the previous one has been paid off in full. So just keep that in mind whenever you're making these payment agreements. If it's something that you need to do and contact us for, we're more than happy to roll 2024 taxes into the previous years. But for 2025, you have to be able to plan with your payment agreement to either start making prepayments for 2025 or to start squirreling some of that money away in order to be able to pay your 2025 taxes before they become delinquent. So just keep that in mind. But it is something that we're able to assist with, and if you have questions about your situation specifically, please feel free to give our office a call and we'll be able to assist you. For our over 65 folks, we have our over 65 disabled homeowners and disabled veterans, along with their surviving spouses, are able to apply for something called a quarterly payment plan. Now, quarterly payment plans are a bit different. We allow these to be paid in 4 equal payments beginning in January. You do not pay penalty or interest on the account so long as you pay these quarterly payments timely. This is another option that we have to help those over 65 disabled homeowners or disabled veterans with making their payments on time when they might be under a stricter income. These payments would be due, again, and we'll essentially divide this up in your total amounts due into 4. And those payments would be due at the end of January, at the end of March, at the end of May, and at the end of July. And when you make those payments, so long as they're being made timely, you do not accrue penalty and interest for the account. And it is something that we have to have your exemptions on the account in order for those to be applied. So in order for us to have this quarterly payment plan applied to your account, it does have to be your general residence homestead, and it has to be with your over 65 exemption, your disabled exemption, or your disabled veterans exemption, or your surviving spouse exemption for either of the latter two. So just keep that in mind. Should that apply to you, please feel free to ask for questions. We have multiple options for payment. So in addition to the normal way, which a lot of you I'm sure are used to, in which you come into a branch office and make your payment, or you mail in your payment with a check, you also have the option of paying by phone or by paying through our website. Now, Please keep in mind whenever you're making a payment to any of our options, if you decide that you'd like to pay with a credit card or a debit card, there is an additional fee that we are required to pay per the banks rather. That is a 2.45 credit card fee or 2.45 card fee. This is regardless of whether you do it online or in person or by phone. If you're paying with a card number, that is a fee that we are required to assess. For those of you who would like to still pay in these digital formats and you'd like to pay over the internet, or you would prefer to pay it by phone, you do have the option of paying with something called an electronic check or an e-check. And when you pay with that e-check, you avoid that 2.45 fee. So just keep that in mind whenever you're going through your payment processes this upcoming end of the year, beginning of next, that you have these options available to you. If you decide that you would prefer to pay to us in cash, please make sure that you go into one of our branch offices to pay, as none of the other options are eligible for paying with cash. But we have this payment information here, and it is available on our website as well. Or if you'd like to give us a call to confirm, we can do that as well. We are here to help. We want to answer your questions and assist in any way that we can. If you haven't already and you have a question for the chat, please feel free to put it in there and I'll be able to assist as best I can. But if not, and you'd like to pass this information along to your friends, your neighbors, you can visit our website at www.hctax.net. In addition, you can call our offices, and we have call center associates who are able to assist you, and that would be to our phone number 713-274-8000. Or if you'd prefer to send us an email with information, that email address is going to be tax.office@hctx.net. But we are here to help. We keep all of these avenues of communication open for a reason. So we look forward to hearing from you if you have any questions.
Sorry, I'd like to raise my hand, but I'm on a phone. I can't figure out how to do that. Is this going to be sent out to everybody on this distribution, the recording of the slides?
Yes, I believe so. I believe that they do send out this recording to everyone, if I recall correctly.
Okay, and I had two questions about the freeze. You mentioned if the senior freeze, if it goes for the school taxes, if it goes up, obviously it's set at whatever the rate would have been. The tax for you said the school tax, was it based on the how is that freeze calculated? It's only based on the appraised value, market value. Can you explain a little bit, like what is frozen?
So,
school tax.
So all of your taxes are determined by taking that appraised value, which is what the appraisal district appraises your value at, minus any exemptions. So any homesteads, over 65s, disabled veterans, solar, whatever the situation may be, all of that gets reduced, and the appraisal district will provide us with those numbers. So we calculate based off of the taxable value. So whatever amount is left over from the appraisal minus any exemptions is your taxable value. That taxable value gets multiplied by our tax rate. Now, every jurisdiction that we collect for has a separate tax rate. They're not all the same. They're not all together. It's each independent one times whatever amount is eligible for after those exemptions are taken out. So when you look at your bill, you'll see the jurisdictions in one column, and then you'll see your appraisal value, and then your exemption. So that's how much you'll be paying on, is the difference between those two. So for the taxing limitations, when you're looking at your bill, that calculation will not show correctly if you have a taxing limitation and the calculation is more than what your taxes were whenever you started that over 65 exemption. So for an example, that tax freeze would affect your school. So just myself, for example, Houston ISD. If I were over the age of 65 and the year I turned 65 and had that exemption applied to my account, I paid $200 for my taxes. The next year, my tax value might have gone up. So the calculation says that I should be paying $300, correct? But because I have that tax freeze for my school, I would not pay more than I did that first year. So I would not pay more than $200. say the opposite happens and my taxable value goes down. I pay, according to the calculations, I pay less. I would not pay the $200. I would pay the $100 per my actual calculations. So I can always pay under my tax freeze. I cannot pay over my tax freeze.
Okay, so if it goes down subsequent years, you're not frozen at the lower amount. You still capped at whatever it was at that year.
Correct.
I see. Like if now the disaster exemptions, if we had it from Hurricane Beryl and we were honored a certain level of damage assessment in 2024, how do we apply it to 2025 if there's really no change, there hasn't been repairs or whatever? How do you apply that same exemption? Because it doesn't seem like it was applied in 2025.
They wouldn't apply the exemption. They would base your taxable value or your appraised value off of whatever the value was at January 1. And this might be something that Anitra might want to butt in here in case I get something wrong. But from what I understand is you would be assessed based off of that January 1 date, and that includes any kinds of damages done or structural integrity issues that you might have. And if it's not correct, as in the value you still believe is too high for what a property is, then at that point you would have to go through the protest process. But that exemption doesn't carry on for further years. It's just that exemption for that year that the damage was done, like per that hurricane.
So if it's not done, then do you just appeal the following year and say it wasn't done, and then you need that assessment? Or how do you, I just don't know. I mean, the condition
at that point you would need to go and state that, the value of your property should be lower than what it is. The appraisal value for your property should be lower than what it is. That's a protest. That's different because it's no longer a disaster area because of how long it has been. And even though it is still damaged, at that point it's no longer damage due to the hurricane. It's damage that needs to be reduced from your appraisal value. But that's something that you would have to go in through the protest process, not through it wouldn't be an additional exemption. It would be something that they would have to reduce the value of the appraised property.
Okay, because we just had the disaster for us put in March because that was the period. I happen to be Fort Bend County. I'm not Harris, but
Okay.
It's the same process. Exactly what you're saying. It looks very similar. So we did it in the hearing in March for last year. So literally, I just had to put in the protest process just a month after they already put the damage assessment for the previous year, and it's like, it's kind of strange. It just happened, and then they just went away a month later for this year.
Well,
for this year, it's going to be they're separate. I think I heard Miss Mabel speak.
I think Anitra's caught up in answering questions in the chat, but you had mentioned that it would be essential for Ms. Cahill to file a protest because at that point they're going to assume at some point the disaster you've taken care of, you've done the repairs. So if you have not, then you would want to file that protest and then provide the information of at this point the deferred maintenance that still needs to take place.
Yeah, I have in 2 weeks a protest hearing. So this is very timely.
Okay.
Literally, it's middle of about second week of July.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what would need to happen in order for that to take place, because at this point it's no longer the immediate change. So that's what that exemption was for whenever they did that disaster relief exemption. It's no longer applicable for the next year because they assume that you would go forth and, repair any damages made. So at this point, you would just have to let them know and include that information in your protest hearing whenever you go in. And if you have any information about last year's taxes that had that exemption on it, then it's something that you might want to take with you whenever you go in.
So do I present a value? Do I need to get an appraiser, or just say, here, it's the same, and you just did this a month before, here's the same pictures, and, I don't know how to, what I need to present to just say it wasn't done yet, or? Do I need to get an appraiser? An appraisal would help? Like, what's the best approach?
That is something that the appraisal district might want to click into a little bit, just because it is something that they would normally handle. But it is Fort Bend. It's a completely different county. They might do things a little differently than Harris County does, or than Harris Central does, rather. But usually any kind of documentation that you can provide is beneficial. If you can provide them with numbers, that's usually something that we recommend. So if you do have an appraisal done for the property of what the damages were, then you can provide that information. Whatever information they would have had or received for this disaster relief exemption that was applied for last year, you may want to include that in as well, just because it is something that you would want to keep for everything else. But that is something that you would want to include, is anything with numeric value, pictures, images, that sort of thing.
Okay, and what's interesting is the damage assessment for the hurricane was on the improvements, even though it was broken up between land and the building. So they said the land doesn't get the 60%. Well, from us, we had pretty severe damage. We had damage assessment level 3. We were in the red zone during the hurricane, so we had extreme damage. So that's why I'm in this meeting with you, because we had very severe damage. So we had a level 3 assessment. And we just had the FEMA inspector come last week, and they're changing things. So we did the appeal. And so all of this, I guess I'll just factor all of that into the protests, right? Put that in, all of that in, I guess. I'm not sure what would be the best way.
Right.
I had something like this for Fort Bend, but you're doing it very similar. The time, the dates, everything is the same. So.
Right.
Yeah,
And
we all have to abide by the same.
tax code, the state tax
Yeah,
code.
we have to abide by the same tax code. So all of the counties in state of Texas have to abide by the same set of laws and regulations. So all of our dates are the same, the way that they process are the same, but what might differ is, like, you know, how they prefer to receive their information, if they prefer it via, you know, a flash drive, or if they would prefer to have like a physical copy of your documentation, or, you know, that might change a little bit from county to county. But the final requirements of what they need and what days they need it by are set by the tax code. So they're all going to kind of align similarly in that.
Okay, so then the FEMA documentation include all of that we received back, that
Right.
assessment.
Any information that you believe is pertinent to the damages done and to show what damages have occurred to the property would be beneficial.
Okay. Yeah, it's always a challenge, and trying to get it, well, the uploading, I wish there was a better process for that, to get the information, because the files get too big. But yeah, with the pictures and everything. Okay,
Right.
yeah.
But for your question as to the tax freeze, you can always pay less than what the freeze is. You just will not pay more. It's not applicable to all your jurisdictions. It's only going to be applicable to your schools, along with you know, certain other, and that just is it's a jurisdiction by jurisdiction basis type of issue. And you know, as I mentioned before, that freeze starts the year in which you turn over the age of 65 and have that exemption added to your account. So just to quickly summarize what I discussed earlier about that freeze. I am looking through the chat to see if there's any other questions that are directed towards myself. Let's see here, or to Harris County Tax Office, I should say. Let's see here. I don't see any particular questions for Harris County, but I'm going to go ahead and read through and see if there's some questions that I'm going to repeat just for the benefit of the recording and anyone who's looking at us from YouTube, Facebook, because I'm pretty sure that we're sharing to them as well. Let's see here. So do you have to keep applying every year for the homestead exemption, along with where can these exemption forms be filled out and mailed back to? So you do not have to keep applying for the homestead exemptions. They are there's a confirmation postcard that's sent to you every year, and so long as that doesn't make it back as undeliverable or returned back to sender to the appraisal district, then it should generally keep going forward. We do recommend that you check online through the appraisal district website to ensure that those are still in effect and are still applicable. and you can see those on their website, as the time goes on. But other than that, no, not generally, you would not need to renew every year for your homestead. And all of those documents can be sent into the appraisal district website at www.hcad.org, and they can be found on the forms page, as well as sent over to the Harris Central Appraisal District.
And I will add that it's important to note that that confirmation card that's usually sent out in late December or early January is our way of auditing which exemptions, whether or not a homeowner is still eligible for those exemptions. If in fact that postcard comes back to HCAD, which they are not forwardable, so if it doesn't reach the homeowner, it will be returned to HCAD. That is when the district will investigate whether or not that homeowner is still eligible for that exemption. Perhaps they're not living there. And if in fact they're unable to make a determination, those exemptions could roll off. So just if you get that card in the mail and nothing's changed on it, sure, just kind of toss it in a drawer. If you don't recall getting it, you may want to check out on our website to see if your exemptions are still there, or just give HCAD a call or shoot an email saying, hey, I don't recall receiving it, but I'm still here. Nothing has changed.
Let's see what else is on here. So, if we previously applied and had the homestead exemption, but don't remember seeing the postcard, Ms. Mabel explained a way to verify, which is just contacting the appraisal district. They have a contact us form on their website along with their phone number posted on there, and you can reach out to them in either of those ways. And that's how you'd be able to verify for them. Let's see here.
I don't see any comment in social media, just,
Oh, perfect. Good. Glad to hear it. I'm glad I'm not missing something. So in addition, this is more of just a comment. The exemption forms and the applications for having those exemptions applied to your account can all be found digitally online. So you don't necessarily need to print them out and send it into the office. You can also submit them electronically along with your documentation. And that's just based off of this request for where she would find those application forms. Let's see here. In addition to finding those forms online and printing them yourself, if you'd prefer to just go into an office and pick up a physical form, you are able to go into the information and assistance floor of the third floor of the Harris Central Appraisal District's office, and you can find their address on their website. There was a question, are there any exemptions for investment property? There are no exemptions for investment properties, but there is currently a three-year project called a circuit breaker that applies to any non-homesteaded properties that are under $5 million of a value. And that is that the appraised value of the current year cannot exceed the 20% of the appraised value of the previous year. So meaning next year's taxable or appraisal value for your property cannot exceed 20% of the appraised value that it was for this year. So it's not an exemption, but it is something that is currently in effect, and it's a three-year pilot project, meaning that they're testing it out to see if it's something that they would like to maintain, or if it's something that they would just use for those 3 years and then it no longer be in effect for later times. So it's just something that is for additional information. The appraisal district website will have more information on how that works. Let's see here. Let's see. There was some additional questions about protesting taxes. So if you protested your taxes and did not accept the value that they attempted to settle, that the appraisal district attempted to settle with. How long does it take for them to get a second date for that meeting? And where will they send the information for that meeting? And that is something that you can go through the quick search for your information on their website, along with date and time will be posted under your hearing status on their website. Normally, those scheduling notices are sent to you in the mail, or rather through an email, or an electronic notification, rather, I'm sorry. It's either mailed or sent to an electronic notification, and that just depends on how you chose to select your correspondence with the appraisal district through that process. Let's see here. And those are all the questions that I'm seeing. Is there anything that anyone from the appraisal district wanted to add, maybe? Anything that y'all think might be helpful, or?
Let's see, Anitra and Donna, they're still answering questions in the chat, but either you guys want to add anything, particularly as it relates to hearings and exemptions?
No, I think Shay did a great job going through the questions.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Oh,
I try.
Oh,
Alrighty.
okay.
Yeah, that's what I
Well,
was
other
gonna
than that,
say. Other than that, boss sums it up.
that's not, no. Well, it's a lot to sum up, but we try. Other than that, just remember that there is that election coming up in November, and in that election, you have the option of voting for Senate Bill 4 and 23, which would increase the exemptions for your schools for homestead and over 65, and then just homestead. So keep that in mind whenever that comes up for November. Read into it, do your research, and you know, be an active part in your community. This is how we make changes happen. So, you know, whenever that comes around, make sure that you've done some research and have an idea of what you're going to be voting for. But other than that, I think we've covered pretty much everything. So unless there is another question that I'm seeing that has not been answered, which I'm seeing pretty much everything has been, I think I'll turn it over to Miss Diana or Miss Cecile, if either of them are in here.
Thank you so much, Shay. Thank you so much to our presenters, to Anitra and to Miss Mabel. And thank you everybody for being here. I'm glad that we were able to answer some questions. As it was discussed before, you guys will get a copy of the presentation emailed to you. And remember that all of our presentations that are held on a weekly basis every month are available on our website, so you can look at previously recorded sessions. And again, thank you so much. Thank you, Donna, as well. Thank you, Shay, Anitra, Ms. Mabel. Thank you all so much. Diana as well. And thank you for all of our participants. And we hope to see you guys on the next AMOS presentation. So you guys take care. Y'all be safe out there.
Thank
Alright.
you.
Thank you
so much. Have a good rest of your day, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.